All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground. I'm sure that has sparked all kinds of questions here in the group. So let's find that mic and get it going around. Yeah, anyone have a question?
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Fascinating. But I'm a person that has a goal to try to walk more. What do you consider optimal in terms of number of days, number of steps? And please describe what you mean by kilometers.
So I think I'm in the only country in the world that doesn't use kilometers. I don't know what Fahrenheit means. I have to look it up. So to me today was 26C.
Well, oh, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Temperature.
I don't know what Fahrenheit is. So kilometer is 5/8 of a mile. So if you can do that fractional multiplication in your head, I'll be very impressed. I need to use my phone. So I don't want to be terribly prescriptive because I don't think that's fair, and but I think the normal advice I give is 5,000 steps a day more than you usually do, because when you track the number of steps that you do, you'll be disappointed by how few there are. So I say turn your phone on and check regularly how many steps you've done. 10,000 steps is a made-up number, but it's a really handy number. So if you're doing 10,000 steps reasonably regularly, 5 or 6 days a week, that's very good. Most adults don't do that. Most adults are doing somewhere between 4,000 or 5,000 steps a day. And many adults are doing 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day, which is not very much at all, whereas children are doing lots and lots. So that would be my advice. Turn on your mobile phone and or step count and use that as a means, and just try and do a lot more than you're doing. And do it evenly through the day. I think a little often is much better than a lot occasionally. Hi, David.
Which one are we?
Go ahead. We'll bring the mic back.
Like Bill Carson, it's a one and does this autobiographical, the Appalachian Trail, and it's being out walking. And
Yeah, it's a wonderful book.
Read it. It's like such an engaging book, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but anyway, it's all about walking.
Yeah, no, I've read it. I recommend it. It's a brilliant book. But yeah.
David.
I was taken in tow by a kid. I was a kid brother by my 79-year-old grandfather, who was Episcopalian, and he took me out, and I tore ahead of him like most kids do, and he said, "Whoa, you are in a greater church, let's say. You're to stop and you're to look and move silently. That's the way the pioneers were taught." And I tried the same disciplinary experiment with my own grandchildren. I held up a wastebasket and said, "Put your cell phones in here and you'll get them back." And I failed dismally. And of my experience with them, I even wrote my own book called Breaking in the Tenderfoot. And now that I'm 81, and this winter I had to have a aortic valve replacement and a pacemaker installed back to back, and I now look at walking, both with people that are my age, because the kids won't be involved. But you have to split the discipline of looking around you and taking in your surroundings. And I get frustrated of looking ahead at those branches and thinking, ugh, I'm gonna trip over that stuff and wake up with neuropathy tomorrow morning. And I just wonder how you find as age advances, you can cope with that, because that's where I'm at the present time. Do you have any thoughts there?
I don't know that I have any good thoughts for you because I'm not too advanced in age yet. I'm not 81. I'm only 76. That's a joke. I think, you know, the walking environment we have, the one we've created, isn't often very safe for us. You know, trip hazards are everywhere. We've done things like design crosswalks and other things to make them uncomfortable for people who are older. We've designed them so that the walking pace that you need to maintain to cross the road safely is, you know, something like 1.2 meters a second, which is often an uncomfortable pace for somebody who's older. So I've said this several times and I'll say it again. We shouldn't focus on the individual so much. We need to focus on how we design the environment around the individual. You know, we shouldn't have trip hazards. We should have safe areas to walk. Crosswalks should be raised so that, you know, but this comes down to policy issues. You know, what are the building codes like? Yeah.
I have a question. This discussion has been focusing on walking. Well, what about other forms of exercise, like bike riding or swimming or playing golf? Can you expect the same benefits that you get from walking? And I'll just add, my wife's a walker. I have found ski poles are very helpful to me to keep up with her. And not only keeping the balance, but I can keep the pace then with her. So I suggest that ski poles if you're having trouble walking.
Yeah, or Nordic walking as it's called. I think, look, cycling a bike is great if you like cycling a bike. If you like swimming, that's fantastic. And I'm not against, and I don't want to be heard to be saying that I'm against any of those forms of exercise. My major point is that walking is our amazing adaptation, and it's the one that we overlook the most. And it's the one that's most accessible to us most easily right throughout the course of life. It doesn't require anything more than a reasonable pair of shoes, and if you're in Ireland, a raincoat. And that's really, you know, you experience the world in a different way when you're on a bicycle. You know, I do cycle a lot. I enjoy cycling. I have an electric bike, which I use, but I hate cycling on the road because motorists are dangerous. I have a car as well. So when I cycle, I try to stick to cycle paths. Walking is as an exercise, very accessible from very early in life until very late in life. Not for everybody, but for most people, most of the time. And that's the kind of point that I kind of emphasize repeatedly in the book. We promised we'd do an experiment or two.
You want to?
Yeah, of course.
Let's do it.
Yeah, no,
Can we just do one more before you?
yeah, no, we can. Please,
question?
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Your information is invaluable. Currently, we have a 15-year-old daughter who's in the ABCD brain study through the NIH.
Yeah.
And she's in the midst of it. It's a 10-year study to see how the brain functions with electronics, with exercise, with the change of life during COVID, and it's been very fascinating. So parents have to be part of the study too. And so the doctors who are studying these children across the nation ask them questions like, what motivates you to exercise? You know, do you do regular exercise? Do you run? Do you walk? And my daughter responds, it depends on what's chasing her, because she'd rather be on her phone or doing electronics. So my question to you is, what motivates these young people to get more active? I used to have to walk to school, you know, and she's in high school, and they don't even pick up a phone. They just text each other. So there's not even interaction of their TMJ. So I wondered, you know, what would you recommend to motivate these teenagers to move?
Yeah, so if I knew I'd bottle it and sell it and make a fortune, and I have a 14-year-old myself, and she hates walking, but I make her walk anyway. So I think the kind of the key point that I come back to time and time again is that we are social walkers. And the best way to get people to walk is to walk together, to walk in groups. And we love walking in groups. Even if people are texting, they're still paying some partial attention to each other. And I think that's the key. They don't necessarily want to walk with adults, but there are lots of ways, I think, of trying to encourage them to walk together in groups. Now, again, that comes down to the safety of the built environment. Comes down to a whole lot of other questions that are things that we don't necessarily have control over. In my own case, happily, our school is like a 12 or 14-minute walk from the house. So that's easy, but that's because I live in an area that the school is easily accessible from. For other people, that may not be the case. It may be that you've got a freeway. How do you walk with the freeway? It's a horrible experience, the noise of the cars going past. So a lot of these things come back to how the environment is designed around you. In the building I work in, if you come in and you want to come to my office up on the 3rd floor, easy way to get to is to take the lift or the elevator, as you call it here, because it's just there when you come in the door. If you want to take the stairs to come and visit me, you have to go through 4 fire doors. That's a really good example of how lousy building design militates against building movement in that should be easy. Microsoft have a large complex, not about 2 or 3 miles from where I live. And I know somebody works in their building there, and they've built a kind of a staircase which works around the circumference of the interior of the building. And people use that all the time instead of the lift because it's easy to use. The default in the environment there is to walk and to use the stairs. The default in my building is to use the elevator because that's the only way you can get up to me, unless you know the secret, go through the 4 fire doors. So the environmental design is really the key thing.
So should we do the
Let's do
exercise?
a quick experiment.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is just to show you how you control your own legs. Are there any drummers in the room? Okay, so you might succeed where everybody else fails. Okay, so take your right hand and stick your index finger up in the air. A really easy thing to do. Now draw the number 6. Can you do that? Yeah? Do it again. It's really easy. Now, just leave your right hand up. Okay, now take your right foot and do a clockwise motion, an outwards motion. Okay, now you can all do that. Now do the number 6 and watch what happens to your foot.
Impossible.
No. So I know from the laughter this worked. Your foot went the way that you weren't expecting it and you hadn't commanded it to go. So this is a simple demonstration of motor programming and the priority that your brain has in the motor system. As far as your brain is concerned, it's given over an awful lot of real estate to the control of your hands and your fingers. It gives over relatively little space to the control of your legs, believe it or not. It actually ships that control down to your spinal cord. And when there's a competition, your brain says there's lots of things happening with my hands. There's not very much happening with my foot. My hands win.
Interesting,
Is that not amazing?
it is. Totally.
So let's do it. Can we do another?
Sure, yeah,
Okay, so now I want you to do this very carefully. Okay. I'm going to ask you to do something which you just need to be careful when you do it. But first part of this is really simple. So take your thumb and stick it out in front of you. Hold your head still. Move your thumb to the left and the right and track your thumb. Okay, that's really easy. Now, hold your thumb out in front of you. Look at your thumb and turn your head while keep focusing on your thumb. You can do that? Yeah, it's easy, okay? Now, in both of those cases, and then I'm going to ask you to do the unpleasant thing in a moment. In the first case, your eyes are moving, okay? And you're getting smooth pursuit. Your thumb shouldn't be doing this. It should be, what you're seeing, it should be moving nice and smoothly, okay? So that's very simple. Now, what I want you to do is take your left index finger, hold your right thumb out, close your right eye, and just push the corner of your eye. Your thumb should jump around if you're doing it right. And just push the eyeball. That's all you have to do.
Oh.
Yeah, your thumb is jumping. Okay, but it's not jumping when you're doing this.
wow,
Okay, why is that? It's because, again, another beautiful piece of design in the motor system subtracts out the movement of your eye when you're moving your eye yourself. When the oculomotor system is moving your eye, it subtracts that movement out. It's called, the technical term is efference copy, but it means that for every movement that you engage in, there's another copy of that movement somewhere in the nervous system. But you violate that rule when you move your own eyeball like this, because the movement is not coming from the oculomotor system. It's actually coming from the hand system.
wow.
One more time.
Yeah. Okay, so just watch what I'm doing, okay? Take your index finger, close your left, or close your right eye. Just touch your eyeball below. No, your left eyeball. Just don't touch the eyeball itself now. Look where I'm touching, okay? Put your other hand down, okay? Just take your finger, okay? Just push the eyeball like that, underneath. Don't touch the eyeball now. Do it through the lid. And is the world jumping around? Okay, you're not doing it right. Yeah, it jumps every time for me. You just push the eyeball. Literally, you're.
Some people really good closing one eye.
So put a hand over an eye. That's fine. And just push the eyeball below. And the world should jump. You got that? But the world is not
Yes.
jumping when your eyeball is engaged
so
in
funny.
voluntary movement. That's the difference.
Any other questions?
Cardiac.
8:10?
I have succeeded in convincing my nurse to get rid of the geezer shuffle. You remember, March
Right, there you go.
is at boot camp. Would you agree with that?
Maybe. I don't know. Perhaps, yeah.
So my biggest disincentive to walking, I tell myself, and I believe, and I'm saying that because I realize it's half a myth, is that I don't have time. Is that I just, no, I would walk if I had more time, or I'd do more walking if I had more time. So I'm curious to know what your 3 top hacks are, psychological or physical, to say, here's how you get yourself actually just walking.
Yes, so that's a great question, actually. So if you want to walk more, there are lots of things. The first thing is, I think you have to monitor. You must have your mobile phone on or your Fitbit or whatever, because Nobody remembers how many thousand steps they took last Tuesday week. Anybody here? No, I can look it up, but I don't know. So the first thing is you have to have a record. If you don't have a record, you'll never know. And then like we all do have busy lives. There's lots of things going on. So if you drive, can you park further away? When you go into a car park at a shop, you see people trying to fight to get into that space that's over beside the entrance to the shop. Why? Park at the first one and then take that walk. So that will give you a few hundred steps that you didn't have. If you're in your office and you're going for lunch, don't go to the regular cafe that you go to one that's a little bit further away. If you take public transport, regularly what I do, because I take the train to work, is I get out a stop or two early and I walk that extra stop. And you don't notice that you're doing it. If I take a phone call, which is a rare thing these days, who phones anybody anymore? But I never take a phone call sitting down. I always take a phone call walking. And just by being conscious like that, in my building, I never take the lift. I force myself every day to take the stairs. There are just simple little things like that. Just see what the defaults in your everyday behaviors are and see which one of those you can adjust just a little. And if you're conscious, if you're measuring what you're doing, you will actually find that you're adding extra steps. If somebody comes to your office and they want to talk about something, walk the corridors with them. Walk outside. You don't have to sit down and eyeball each other. Go for a little chat and walk. There's lots of ways of just building a little bit of extra movement in. And it's a nicer thing to do. None of these are magic bullets, by the way, but lots of small changes.
What I hear you, what you say is, and I realize my own thing, like, no, I have to walk 3 miles.
No. Few extra 100 steps here, a few extra 100 there over the course of the day, regularly. One thing I always do is I have an alarm on my laptop, which I set to go off every 50 minutes. And I get up and I walk around for 2 or 3 minutes and then sit down again. And of course you get up and you go, oh, my back, and all of that stuff. But that's an easy thing to do rather than sitting there for an hour and just giving.
One last quick question.
Does housework count?
Yes, it does. Actually, believe it or not, there have been some great studies on housework. When you measure the amount of steps that people take if they're cleaning the house, it actually turns out to be quite a bit, especially if it's a 2 or 3 story house when you're running up and down stairs all the time. Yeah.
Recreational walking.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is carrying things from point A to
It's point B. Yeah. But I bet you if you measured the number of steps that you were taking, you'd be really surprised. And some of them will involve, walking up the stairs, carrying something. That's great. Putting that kind of load on your body is regularly is great.
Yeah, I was curious if all this walking has a direct impact on our endurance. So the more you walk, yes, it's healthy and it's all those things that you mentioned, but can we actually develop greater endurance just by strolling?
The answer is yes, but and the example that we spoke about at the start of the 62-year-old Italian is a great example of that. You can build the endurance very quickly, but you decondition really quickly too. So you have to keep it up. It's not like, you give yourself a dose of 10,000 steps for 30 days. That's you done for the year. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. If you give up after your 30 days, by 60 days, you'll be back to where you were on day 1. So you have to keep it up.
Thank you.
So we're going to wrap up, but I do want to just comment that as we have now gone deeper into all of this, I keep coming back to the notion that, in fact, many of the things that outcomes of walking are very similar to the things that we believe occur in some of the spiritual practices that we observe. And, the whole experience of awe and wonder when we're out in nature, the reduction in sort of the feeling of stress and some of the other elements when we're, in meditation. It seems like there's an awful lot of overlap here. I guess the question is whether or not there's any really good research coming out on some of these other practices that we should be paying attention to at this point.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work going on mindfulness and on meditation and on all of the things. So, and I think that the first thing to say is that people do experience interesting psychological states. There's no question about that. They're not always good, which is something that's not often said. So if you take people and you train them to be meditators, people who are naive meditators, about 20% of people who meditate find it to be an aversive experience.
Yeah.
They really do not like the dissolution of self that they experience. That not to say that casts any aspersions on the positive experience that the other 80% of people have, but we know with certainty that everything that people do, or there will be a group of people for whom it does not work.
Right.
And that's okay. Humans are different. But there's also little doubt that if you look over the course of human history, if you look across the planet, people chase the transcendent, however they define it, in all sorts of different ways. So I had the experience of being in India, I think in 2005, and the largest movement of people on the planet is to a religious festival, which is held in October. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of it. I found myself, I was at a conference, but we diverted from the conference to attend the kind of this festival. And something like 100 million people turn up, or 80 million people turn up, and they walk from all over India to this place, and then they walk home again. There's this, not quite on the same scale, but there's a massive pilgrimage undertaken in Mexico every year, a Marian pilgrimage. I think something like 4 million people a year go to that, which is again an astonishing number. The Camino fell off a lot because of the COVID experience, but nonetheless, there are large numbers of people who undertake these long distance walks, not necessarily for one reason or another, but they get something of tremendous value for themselves from this. And I don't think there's enough work going on to understand what's going on. But nonetheless, it is clearly the case that people have done this since time immemorial. Walking and teaching is something that goes, the Greeks engaged in the peripatetic school. It's something that features in all sorts of stories from all sorts of times and places. And it is our natural adaptation. We get very good at it very, very quickly and very easily.
Well, thank you so much for this fascinating discussion of walking. I think we'll all think about this for a long time to come. It may even end up walking for a long time to come.
I hope so.
And I just want to mention that we are going on hiatus for the summer, as we always do. So this is the last of the events that we have planned for the 22-23 season. Hope to see everybody again next fall. We haven't yet set what we're going to do in September, but in October, we will have an introductory workshop to meditation, if anybody's really interested in that, given by the son of one of our parishioners who grew up in Greenwich and then lived in India for 20 years. And he's promised to demystify the whole process for everybody. And then on November 4th, Saturday, we're going to have some national figures come in and talk about the women's wellness movement that's underway. So be looking at your emails over the summer, because we'll be telling you more about some of these events coming up. And yes, we are going to be selling books back there. Shane's agreed to sign them. I will invite you to come over and have a drink if that's something of interest to you. And with that, I will sign out with our usual saying of, may you be happy, May you be well. May you be safe. May you be peaceful and at ease until we meet again. Good night.